after our first murder. Then, what with police and newspaper men digging about our intermingled roots, it began to dawn on me that we were indeed a strange and perhaps not very healthy human garden. Long ago, Crescent Place was merely a collection of fine old semi-country houses, each set in its own grounds, and all roughly connected by a semicircular dirt road. Then the city grew in that direction, the dirt road was paved, and to protect themselves, the owners built a gate at the entrance and marked it private. The gate was never closed, of course. It was a gesture of dignified privacy, and nothing more. The piece of empty ground which the road enclosed, and on which our houses faced, was common property, and in the course of time was planted like a small park at our mutual expense. Long ago it had been a part of a large empty area on which we had grazed our cows, and so now this glorified fragment was still called the Common. The 5 houses faced toward the Common, and were originally some considerable distance apart. Here and there additions have rather lessened this distance, but each house still retains that which it values above all price, its privacy and seclusion. When, by the additions I have mentioned, or for other reasons, this in the past has been found threatened, a campaign of tree and shrubbery planting has at once been instituted, so that for more than half a year, save for certain weak spots in our defences, we resemble nothing so much as 5 green embattled fortresses. We have these weak spots, however. One window of my own bedroom, for example, still commands an excellent view of certain parts of the house on our right, and from the end of our guest wing we have more than a glimpse of the one on the left. Both of which outlook posts, as well as the ones upstairs which command our own garage, were to play their own part in our tragedies. But in the main, until Thursday, August the 18th of last year at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, each of the 5 houses had successfully, for 40 years or more, preserved its seclusion and its slightly arrogant detachment from the others and from the world. Had been neighbourly without being intimate, had fought innovative to the last ditch. Helen Wellington maintaining that the last hairpin in the world with a butterfly top was the one Lydia Talbot still wore, and was still placidly unaware of much more of the living world than it could see through the gate onto Liberty Avenue. My mother and I live in the centre house, and thus almost directly face the little common and the gate beyond it. Mother is still in deep mourning for my father, who has been dead for 20 years, and later on, when things began to happen, I was shocked to hear her described as the eternal widow draped in crape, and myself as a youngish spinster, at 28, who had been abnormally repressed and was therefore by intimation more or less psychopathic as a result. This was the same tabloid which, as our murders went on, discovered that there were exactly 13 people living on the Crescent, not counting the servants, and under the title The Unlucky Number, ran an article a day for 13 days on one or the other of us. Yet the fact remains that of all the 5 houses along the Crescent, ours was later proved to be the most normal, although we were to have our fair share of trouble and even horror, and that the next in normality and the first in peaceful and ordered living was the Lancaster house next door to us. Until, on that August afternoon last year, old Mrs. Lancaster was murdered in such a hideous fashion. The Lancaster house lay to the right of us. The family consisted of old Mr. Lancaster, his wife, a bedridden invalid, and his 2 stepdaughters, Emily and Margaret. But so long ago had this second marriage taken place that no one seemed to remember the fact, not even the stepdaughters themselves, now staid middle-aged women. They were devoted to their stepfather, whose name they had taken, and the entire life in the house centred on the small, rather dominant and not too agreeable elderly invalid in her wide bed on the 2nd floor. Beyond the Lancaster house and nearest the gate on its side was the Talbots, and we had known them so long that Mrs. Talbot's eccentricity was as much a part of her as her full collection of dahlias or her ancient faded sables. Her mania, if one may call it that, was in locking everything up and keeping the keys. Miss Mamie, our local visiting dressmaker, said that she sat all day